Hello guys, and welcome back to the 635 Ministries channel. My name is Michael.
And my name is Drew.
And today we're going to be breaking down the Rescue Mission series, a series that Drew has worked very hard on. This is a 5-part series that covers 5 controversial topics, and he's spent countless hours on this. He's already covered 3 of these in previous studies. Still has 2 more to go, but today we're going to kind of break down the whole overview of it. I'm going to ask Drew some questions about this whole series that he's come up with. So, first question I got for you, Drew, is can you just explain the Rescue Mission series and what it's all about?
Yeah, for sure. So the Rescue Mission series is something that's been on my heart the past couple months. And it kind of has stemmed from my conversations with a lot of people and things that I've heard in the news and seen on television. And it surrounds, it covers 5 different topics, namely abortion, same-sex relationships, marriage, gender issues, and then racial issues. And these are all 5 very controversial topics that appear a lot, and a lot of Christians don't know how to actually engage in well-reasoned and biblically grounded discussions with people. And so this series of teachings is designed to enable Christians to do just that, to engage in well-thought-out, biblically grounded discussions with people.
So, how did you get the name for the Rescue Mission? Where does that name come from?
Yeah, I really love that question because I actually didn't initially have it titled the Rescue Mission series. I actually had it titled Culture War. But that lasted for only about a day because when I started to think about it, that's not really the Great Commission. It doesn't embody the spirit of the Great Commission. The Great Commission at the end of Matthew in chapter 28 says, "Go, make disciples of all nations, baptize them, and then teach them all that I've commanded you." It doesn't say go and beat somebody down. Go and destroy them. Destroy their worldview, make them depressed and feel wrong and guilty and just, rah, rah, rah. That rah, rah, rah mentality that is commonly, talked about in evangelism.
Yeah.
It's kind of the mindset. Ephesians 6 says, granted, that we fight a spiritual battle, a spiritual war, against the authorities, against the rulers in the heavenly places, and the cosmic powers over this present darkness. But that doesn't necessarily mean go and attack the person itself, Yeah. So I felt like that the term culture war gave that impression. But I rather thought of it as a rescue mission because when I think about why people, and I hope to really show this in these next 5 videos on this, when you really think about it, why these people believe in these false worldviews, I think that it stems from a place of intense suffering. And it's really a cry for help. And when they have nowhere to turn to, the church has not stepped up and answered the call, and so they accept these false worldviews that seem to offer this sense of hope and freedom and fulfillment and love, but as I also hope to show in these next few presentations, it only leads to depression and despair and, quite frankly, darkness. And so that's why I call it the Rescue Mission, is to enable Christians to also not only engage in these topics, but to try to bring them out of that state of suffering and to see the light of the gospel of Christ.
Right. Yeah, that seems to be a good goal for anybody. We're always trying to rescue the lost. So
exactly.
Makes perfect sense. So I guess the main thing is, though, how does this affect me? How does this affect the Christians, and why do we need to discuss these things?
Yeah, great question. Because before you really study anything, you have to ask, well, why do we care? That's basically what you just asked. Why do we care as Christians? Well, 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 15 says that the church of the living God is a pillar and a buttress of truth. Now, a pillar, if you think about it, is something that upholds a structure. And this structure is the structure of truth. It's a metaphor.
Right.
Now, Christ is eventually going to come and establish his kingdom, and he is going to be the pillar of truth. He's described as the cornerstone upon which everything is laid, and he's going to come and establish that. But for the present time, that the church is that pillar that upholds the truth of the gospel and a biblical sound doctrine in this world. And so I think that it's important for Christians to uphold what is in accordance with sound, true biblical doctrine. But Jude also tells us in verse 3, he says, "Beloved, although I was very eager to write to you about our common salvation, I found it necessary to write, appealing to you to contend for the faith that was once for all delivered to the saints." Now he goes on to describe these opponents and these enemies that the church is dealing with as people who say they're Christians, and they may even be leaders in the church. I think somewhere he describes them as shepherds feeding themselves, and they're leaders in the church, but if you go on to verse 4, it says that they deny and pervert the grace of our God in sensuality and deny our only Master and Lord Jesus Christ. And so it's essentially Jude is saying, fight for the faith and fight against this awful doctrine, this sin that's pervading the church.
Right.
And so I think that Christians these days, and I hope to show that all these topics that we're going to discuss are moral issues that the Bible does have authority to speak on. And I think that we need to, therefore, contend for that truth and contend against sin, to fight against sin. So it has a lot of relevance for Christians.
Yeah, for sure. I guess the thing that I feel is like these are really political issues. People view them as a political issue, and we've been taught that the country was founded with a separation of church and state. So we've always been said, well, why don't we just stay out of it? So how do you respond to something like that?
Yeah, and that's typically an argument I definitely see among pro-choice advocates, people who support abortion, is they say, well, I may not necessarily agree with abortion, but Christians need to just stay out of these issues. They just need to stay out of these issues.
Of course, yeah.
But I think you have to define terms. And this is important in any conversation, and especially in any apologetics or evangelism that anybody does. Like, for instance, if I go up to somebody, I've done this countless times, and I ask, do you believe in God? Well, quite frankly, actually, more people will say yes than you think.
Yeah.
And I think, but the more I probe and the more I dive and dig deep, that this God is not the God of the Bible. It's a God either of another religion, so like Islam, or maybe of Mormonism, or maybe it's something else that they have kind of concocted in their own minds. But they still say, yeah, I believe in God. But it's not the same God. And so you have to define terms in order to actually engage in a meaningful conversation. And the same goes for separation of church and state. And if you look at the original intention of the separation of church and state, it was so that the the church would not act as a governmental entity.
Right.
It wouldn't make these legislative laws. And the effects of that have really kind of shown themselves to be a little bit disastrous, if I'm quite frank. Like the Ottoman Empire and the Armenian genocide is a great example of that. So, and I think when you think of it that way, I want to make the point that the separation of church and state is not the separation of morality and state. Okay?
Right. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah, exactly. Maybe it's best if I just give an example.
Okay.
So let's say that the same person who's pro-choice comes up and says, Christians shouldn't be involved in any of these issues. Separation of church and state, right?
Right.
Okay. Well, let's say I reply back and I say, okay, well then I think that it's okay for me to murder you right now because I'm angry at you. Or maybe I should steal what you have on you. I should steal your wallet.
Yeah.
Now that person, that pro-choice advocate who just says separation of church and state is going to be like, whoa, no. You shouldn't do that. That's illegal. That's wrong.
Right.
But then I'm going to be like, but shouldn't there be separation of church and state? Because quite frankly, much of the founding fathers believed in a Judeo-Christian ethics system. And do not steal and do not murder are in the Ten Commandments in Exodus. It's strongly, the Ten Commandments are very strong in American culture more than people realize, especially the last number 5 through 10.
Yeah.
Last 6. So I think that proves my point is that it's not the separation of church and state, it's the separation of morality and state. And as I hope to make clear in my presentation, abortion is a moral issue.
Yeah, absolutely. I can understand that the separation of morality and state is totally separate because people, like you were talking about, they do say, yeah, you shouldn't get involved. The church shouldn't be involved in decision making and laws. But in the same breath, they'll say, yeah, murder's illegal, theft is illegal, which is all the moral code from the Bible. That comes from the Bible.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that has played a part in that. So I guess my last question to you, Drew, is what's your end goal? Like, what do you plan to accomplish with this series?
Yeah, and I'm going to summarize that in 3 bullet points. The first is, like I said at the very beginning, I want Christians to be able to form well-reasoned, biblically grounded, and God-glorifying opinions on these issues. Not to run away in fear or to say, well, this doesn't really pertain to me. Or maybe they'll say, I feel like I'm not smart enough to do that. But I think that the Bible teaches us to be wise. And I feel like I feel like everything as a Christian should come from that. And so I think that the first thing is to engage Christians to engage with the text, engage with the biblical text thoughtfully and critically to form these opinions on these issues when they come up. The second thing is to understand what I said before, that this is not really a war on the person. Yes, we are in the war against these satanic forces of darkness.
Yeah.
We are in that war. But this person is under sin and under this false teaching and worldview I see them more as a casualty instead of actual, because like I said before, they're really hurting and they have turned to these false worldviews and false teachings for comfort. And so I want Christians to understand that is really what's going on here in a person's heart. And the third thing that I really want to teach, if not more inspire, is a spirit to actually go and contend for the faith. Because points 1 and 2 are all intellectual, and they're all knowledge-based and stems around the intellect and the mind and learning and things like that. But the third one is, when the time comes, will you be able to stand up and defend the faith and to actually speak what the Bible teaches?
Yeah.
And that's the third thing, is that inspiration and motivation to go and speak truth. And that's speak the truth in love, as Paul puts in Ephesians chapter 4. And that's really my prayer for all of these presentations.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Well, there you have it. Like I said before, Drew's already covered 3 of these on our studies, but hopefully we can see you this Tuesday at our first ever live stream of our study where he's
Yeah.
going to cover part 4, and we hope to see you there. Also, be looking forward to Drew going back and revisiting the first 3, giving an overview and a commentary on them. Hopefully, we can really learn and be prepared, like you said. I think that's a good way to put it. But
Yeah.
just want to thank everybody. Hope you liked the video. Subscribe, leave us a comment, and ask us a question.
Please do. And I hope that you're as excited as I am to take this journey with us. And to God be all the glory. Amen.